Hello, welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions. I'm Catherine Bird and I'm here with Michelle Hawk. And today's episode is how do I heal myself? And I cannot remember, Michelle, what number you just told me 2 seconds ago that we were on. So,
131.
okay, great. 131. It's a lot. But we've been on hiatus. We've taken a big long break for the summer. I was on book tour. Michelle's been super busy uh, hosting ceremonies and being on land and doing a lot of retreats and lots of in-person work. So we've been so busy that we have taken a big break, but now it's fall and we're coming back inside our houses and we're ready to bring back some episodes. So we're really happy to be here and to be sharing with you. Uh, we've actually learned a lot, even just this summer, because we're always learning new things and developing new things and coming up with new programs. So I'm super happy to be here. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Kat. Yes, it's good to be back. Thank you, all of you, for your patience. I don't know maybe you've noticed we took a big break, maybe not, but that's okay. We're back now, and I'm very excited to be bringing some new energy and inspiration to you. Let's just do like a little tiny catch up. Kat published her book. That's
We did.
huge. It's sitting right there behind her. Yeah, look at that. Okay, great. Do you want to hold it up for a second?
I don't know. The healing process, inner work and skill development to fulfill your sacred purpose. You can get it at all the places online, and you can find out more on my website, catherinebird.com. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been really beautiful to get it out there and to do some book events. And I'm currently in the middle of a book club where we're going through each chapter and focusing on some specific sections because there's so much in there that I needed to kind of break it down and make it easy for people to engage with. So that's been really fun.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And I
Yay.
came to Oregon to see Michelle and do a book event there.
Yeah, it was wonderful. That was one of many events and retreats that I was hosting all summer. Kat mentioned that I was super busy. And yeah, I think there was about a 6 or 7 week period where I maybe had 3 days off, like with nothing going on to myself during that time. It was pretty bonkers. But I got to host a lot of retreats and events, including I Am Alchemy retreats. I actually have the next I Am Alchemy retreat coming up in just a week, actually. So yeah, it's been flying by. But here we are. We're here today to talk about healing because this is something that is really quintessential to both of our work, both personally in our personal practice and then also professionally, how we're supporting other people in the healing journey. So I know that a lot of our episodes kind of dance around different aspects of healing. We talk about different healing modalities, different like particularities of healing. But here we are to really just dive into what does it mean to heal ourselves, which is why so many of us come into spiritual practice in the first place, I think, is because of this calling that we have to come into our own wholeness, our own well-being, healing on every level, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So let's dive in with that, Kat. I know let's give a little like, what do we mean by that? What does that mean for us personally? How's that showing up right now?
Yeah. Well, I think that no matter who you are, we all have things that we have to move through, things that we have to heal. Some of us, a lot of things. And some people have a really intense journey with their own healing process, which, it can be confusing. It can be kind of lonely sometimes. So,
Mhm.
because a lot of times people don't talk about their own healing. Even as a healer, we will often not share about our own healing journey because there's still even stigma about having anything within you that needs to be healed. Oh, I have this childhood trauma, or I have an illness, or I have a physical issue in my body that needs attention. We don't like to disclose that to other people. So a lot of times we're not even aware that a lot of people are working through things or even in on the struggle bus, and we will think that we're kind of alone in our own personal healing experience, but we're all on a healing journey. and at different places at different times and need different things. And so I think it's important for us to be kind of pulling the, I don't know, pulling the band-aid back and actually showing people like, hey, we all have stuff that's, that's challenging. And that's part of it. That's part of the spiritual development. It's part of becoming a practitioner. It's part of being on this path. And no matter who you are, you're going to come up with stuff in your life that you need support around or you need to heal, whether it's, you go through a big life transition, you lose someone, your body will age. It happens to everyone. So we're always in this space of healing. And I think it's important for us to learn how to be in relationship with our healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pulling back the Band-Aid sounds really
Gross.
Right. But there is the vulnerability of that, of like, hey, I don't necessarily have myself, it's almost this like removing the veils of illusion, or removing this like idea that, we as practitioners or healers need to have everything figured out and be totally perfect. And I think I see in a lot of people, particularly who are at the beginning of their service journey, because some people on the healing journey are not called to offer that to other people, but some people are. And there's this idea of, okay, I have to be like at a certain place before I can turn around and offer this to others. And I would say yes and no to that. There's this idea of like, okay, as long as we're a little bit further on the path than somebody else, we can turn around and offer help to those who might, be where we were a year ago or whatever. And then there's also this like, don't have to be perfect in order to offer service to somebody else. But yeah, I think there's also this, a vulnerability in that.
Yeah.
And there's a vulnerability to be in a position of service and to say, you know what, this is something that I'm going through right now. And it might be really hard. It might be really uncomfortable. And I'm calling upon all of my resources and my tools, and I'm supporting myself in this experience. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this
Well,
demystification.
exactly. It makes us uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It makes other people uncomfortable. We as a society are very uncomfortable with anything that isn't very perfect, and we've become very obsessed with perfection. And so when we witness someone who is saying, hey, I have stuff going on too, that can be really challenging for people because we pedestalize people, we make assumptions about people. And there's so many practitioners that I've met who've had deep personal journeys with healing themselves. And it's part
Mm-hmm.
of the way that we learn and develop and grow. And it's okay. I think there was something that you said there that about, offering service. I mean, I think that we have to be willing to um, not, what is this, like, not fool ourselves and like not illusion and gaslight our own selves about where we're at,
Mm-hmm.
right, wherever that is. And it might be that, maybe we're not ready to offer something, but it also might be that, oh wow, I actually am going through something big and deep here, and it's okay for me to take time and space for that, and to
Mm-hmm.
nurture and tend to myself. And instead of kind of forcing ourselves to keep going and pushing and serving in a way that is to our detriment.
Yeah.
Like, stop kidding
Yeah.
ourselves sometimes.
Right. Right. And also there's something that you said right before this, Kat, that reminded me of like the prerequisite in a lot of wisdom tradition societies, like the prerequisite to be a healer or to be a shaman is that you needed to survive a healing crisis. You needed to survive either some like dark night of the soul, rite of passage initiation, near death experience, like some deep initiation that required you to heal yourself in order to be qualified to offer healing to other people. So, I'm inviting us also to look at this. And both Kat and I are talking about this through the lens of being in a healer role or as a practitioner, because we are. And whether you're on that path or not, looking at like, these are rite of passage initiations. So going through the healing process is a very deep journey that inherently involves a death, purification, and rebirth process as you are going through, clearing out old wounds and old trauma, going into a deep death process within your body of allowing unhealthy tissues or organ dysfunction to leave the body. There's a deep purgation process that can happen, and then the purification, and then the rebirth, the cultivation, the being born into this new version of who you are. It is a very alchemical journey. It's a very like deep initiation, and inevitably when we're going through a healing journey, it's working on all levels and layers simultaneously.
Yeah. And it is a place where you do cultivate a lot of wisdom, because there is a need to develop a self, like we talk about self-care a lot in our society, but
Mm-hmm.
a deep self-love, a self protection, a self advocacy, like it can bring up a lot of stuff from people where, a lot of times, especially drawn to this path, we tend to be, people pleasers and helpers, and oh, let me just show up and let me tend to others. And in our own personal healing, we have to shine that light on ourselves and be willing to love ourselves in an ever deepening way so that we can love the world in an ever deepening way, and
Mm-hmm.
understand what that feels like at a very uh, deep sensory level. But it's not the easiest journey to tend to yourself. It's actually often easier to tend to others than to tend to yourself
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people.
Yeah, particularly for those who are, raised or socialized feminine, who are in some type of caregiver, nurturer role in their lives, whether, if they have kids or they're, just loving, compassionate people. That I love that you brought this up, Kat, like super, super important. And I've seen this in myself, I've experienced this, and I see this in a lot of my clients too, where it's almost this like people squirming away from the discomfort of giving themselves the kind of attention that they actually need in order to have a healing experience.
Yeah.
Because, it can be deeply uncomfortable. It can be deeply confronting. And then there can also be this tremendous grief process that accompanies that of, oh, wow, I've spent my entire life like letting myself not have that kind of love, or letting myself get to the point where I need this kind of major healing intervention in order to resolve whatever long-term issues, very common, unfortunately, that I see in my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want it to change and be better overnight. We want to be like, okay, no, I did that. Oh, I love myself. I'm all healed. Okay, great. But like you said, a lot of times if we have some kind of illness, it's been brewing for years. It's been sometimes our whole life. This illness has been brewing within us.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I've seen people have things like a traumatic brain injury, something that really like forces there is no choice but to stop. You, there is no choice but to lay down and be with yourself. And sometimes that can take a really long time. And it is so confronting. It is so, I even met someone last night who, was my age, and she had a cane, and she was like, well, yeah, I had a traumatic brain injury and have to walk with this cane. And you can just see that personal journey with that reality
Mm-hmm.
of accepting that. I was, really blessed right now this weekend to be attending a 13 Indigenous Grandmothers conference and event, and to see the grandmothers there. And we were at a luncheon, and one of the grandmothers, someone, there was a wheelchair there, and she was, she's did not want to do a lot of walking because she's saving her strength. And someone was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, we can push you in this wheelchair." And she was like, "No." That is not happening. You're not,
Uh,
it's not good optics, right? Like we don't want to be seen in a way, and we don't want to reinforce ourselves, like reinforce, like, oh, I'm not at my best, or I'm not, whatever we might think about that, like, oh, I'm not healed, I'm not whole, I'm not enough, like whatever our own impersonal story is inside of that, where we're like, no, I'm not doing this. There was another woman who was um, a grandmother from a grandmother, and we met her at in like 10 o'clock at night, and she was in there, she had a cane, and she was like, "Oh, my knees hurt." And someone else was like, "Oh, I could get you, a chair or whatever." And she was like, "No." Absolutely not. Even though she was traveling for days and days and hadn't slept in 2 days. And she was
mhm,
like, "Nope, here I am. I'm walking and I'm doing it." And so
mhm,
for a lot of us, I think that we we have that inner fortitude that keeps us going. We push,
mhm,
and the energy and the strength and the power that we have in our practices and from the earth keeps us going. And so it's really challenging when we have to ask for help
mhm.
or accept help. Other people are trying to help us, and we're like, "No, please stop." Don't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And I think you mentioned the piece about it's not good optics. Part of it is we don't want other people to see us differently, or we don't want to see ourselves differently. And my partner's parents are aging, and aging mostly okay. But his father was recently in the hospital because he got this infection that I don't even know how long he had it, maybe like a couple of weeks or so, and just wasn't treating it. And then finally, like, one night he just couldn't stand up. And so then, the next day, his wife calls the doctor and they're like, "What are you doing? Get him into the hospital right away. If he can't walk, he can't stand up." And so then, he's currently still in rehab. He can walk again now. He kicked the infection, but still there's this, like, okay, you were putting up with this infection for who knows how long because you didn't want to, people to cater to you, or you didn't want to, acknowledge this vulnerability. And so, there's a lot of elements that go into that, no matter, where we are in the age spectrum in our bodies, or where we are in capacity as well. But I think there's this, Kat, you're mentioning, like, we draw a lot of strength from our practices and from the earth and from spirit, from our connection. And I think it's definitely a balance of being present with our own inner fortitude, being present with our resiliency, being present with the connection that we have with our bodies, and being fueled by that, and also asking for help when we need it. It is, there's definitely a sweet spot in the intersection of those that can be a little tough to navigate sometimes. So let's talk about, kind of what are some of the common themes that we see in people going through a healing journey, a healing trajectory, and then some. We've been talking about obstacles and blockages to that, but yeah, let's go through, if someone's asking, how do I heal myself? What do we pay attention to with that?
Well, I think that, knowing that we're a human and that we have biology, physiology, we have this human body, which all kinds of things can happen to. And, a lot of times people end up on this path of healing because, well, like, just stuff happens, and we might think, "Oh, wow, I should have done this, or I didn't do that." But a lot of times things just happen, and then they're there often to teach us and to help us and to uh, help us to grow. And I think that
Mhm.
that is a really huge orientation that we need to have. that, sometimes we're like, oh, well, this is, uh, my fault because of
Mhm.
this, but I think that the important orientation is not necessarily whether I should have or whatever, right? But that this is here also for my benefit.
Mhm.
This is here to teach me, to support me in some kind of way. And I think that this is, how I look at it is this different orientation around healing that we get to have, which I look at in this like prayerful way of teach me, teach me through this how to love myself more, how to understand healing more, how to care for myself in a new way. Teach me and help me to find wisdom through this experience so that I may be full of even more life, more light, more love, more capacity, and that I can continue to serve in a big way. And
Mhm.
I think that when we shift our orientation into that more empowered, learning, growing, developing perspective, even when we're struggling, we can come at it from a higher consciousness perspective through that process.
Mm. Kat, I love what you said. So everybody, I'm going to invite you to go back and re-listen to that section that Kat was talking about like how to be prayerful in our approach to the healing journey. Please teach me, please help me learn this and that. Like I'm just kind of letting that land for a minute.
Well, because
Mm.
I think
That
that
was
most of
good.
the time when we're on that healing journey, our prayer is make this pain go away.
Totally. Yeah.
Because
Or
pain
like fix
sucks.
this problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Fix this,
Yeah.
change this, make the pain stop. That's the
Yeah.
focus. But
Yeah.
when we shift here, we actually have this opportunity to go into the pain
Mm.
and to
I
be with
think Kat, something that this really speaks to is again the kind of Western medical pathologization of dis-ease versus the holistic wisdom tradition understanding of dis-ease, right? And we even looking at that through the lens of our own approach to it, right? So the Western medical approach is treat the symptoms and get rid of the symptoms, get rid of the pain. And the holistic wisdom tradition approach is okay, understand the underlying causes and treat the underlying causes. And so then when we're approaching our dis-ease or our dysregulation or healing journey in the same way through the Western pathologizing mindset, we're looking at stop pain, get rid of the symptoms, move on with my life, and keep going, like the power through, versus the okay, how can I treat those underlying things that led me to be in this position in the first place. So I think that's a really important point about just switching, where does our mindset come in from, and how to bring that holistic cause oriented perspective to this rather than treating symptoms and or even just viewing ourselves as treating symptoms.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And it opens up new doors, right? Because I think that when we're on the healing journey, we have to be willing to open our minds and our hearts and our consciousness and our body to all kinds of new things and new awareness. And so we want to orient ourselves in a way that makes that possible. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, bring the people into my life that I most need to support this. Bring the supplements, bring the information that's going to help
Mm-hmm.
me. Like, let it just land in my experience somewhere easily.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the
Yeah.
next teacher in so that I can understand this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I'm curious. Let's talk about like where we see people get hung up or stuck in this journey. I think again, I mentioned this is a very alchemical process that we inherently go through in a healing journey. And Kat and I have recorded a few episodes about alchemy. So you can go back and look for, the cycle of alchemy, alchemy for spiritual growth or spiritual awakening, whatever it's called. Just go into our episodes and search for alchemy, because we'll talk about a little bit more of each of the stages of alchemy. But suffice it to say, there's a death process, a purification process, and a rebirth process. And in the death process, there's the dismantling of physical and energetic and emotional structures. So looking at, okay, a physical purging, whether that's, if you've got a bug and you're coughing up gunk, or if you're puking stuff out, right? So there's this physical aspect of purging. Or there's, okay, if you're taking a lot of supplements to fight an infection, right? That is a death process, because you're inviting in kind of a targeted purge. And there's also this energetic and emotional aspect of death and purging as well. And I see one of the big hangups that I see people get into with, again, not only the physical healing, but also the mental, emotional, spiritual healing aspect is, first, a resistance to enter the process into the first place. And that's a lot of what Kat and I have been talking about so far, about resistance in the way that we see ourselves, or resistance of even acknowledging that there's a problem. Resistance also because of fear of, oh my gosh, I think that seems really uncomfortable. I don't really want to engage with that, or I want to deny that that's happening, or maybe I don't want to touch that trauma. So there's this fear and trepidation, resistance to even entering into a healing journey in the first place. And then once people do, there's almost the a place where people get stuck is in that like obsessive purging, really like ruminating within the loss, ruminating within also the energetic and emotional stuff of meaning making about, Kat, you were talking about like, oh, this, there's like sort of a weird self-punishment of like, oh, this is my fault that this happened. Or there's this victim energy where, oh, I'm the victim of whatever circumstances are bringing this about. Or again, there's this like reinforcing of a trauma identity that can happen if people are really like rolling around in it. So those are two areas that I see people get stuck, both in terms of like not even wanting to enter into it in the first place. And then if we're approaching it through this either like victimization or like addictive nature of rolling around in the discomfort part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
It really is true. We can get stuck
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. But I think one of the words that you said here is identity. And
Mm-hmm.
by the nature of what you're going through, your identity will be shook in some way. Generally, if you're really working through something, there is usually some kind of identity that you have that you must let go of in a way, and some maybe new identity that you're going to be bringing forward. But
Mm-hmm.
it's going to confront who you think you are and how you've defined yourself and how
Mm-hmm.
uh, you've defined yourself in relationship to others, so other people's expectations of you. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we get so much out of our identity as a helper, as a healer, as a mom, as a friend, as the person at work who always picks up the slack and does all the extra stuff and stays late and gets things done. And then you're going through a healing journey and you just hit that point where you're like, no, I can't. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot show up in this way anymore. I cannot fulfill this identity that I've created so that I feel needed and loved and respected and that I'm safe. I have to actually pull back and take care of myself. And those identities start to pull apart. And that is where people get real, it's upsetting. It
Mm-hmm.
is deeply confronting and upsetting. And it's the same as when you go through the journey of motherhood or even fatherhood, where you're like, wow, I am no longer able to show up in this way because I have to show up 100% over here for a while. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be incredibly confronting for people.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's part of the death process of like letting go of these old aspects and versions of ourselves, not only physically in terms of how you're spending your time, your energy, your attention, but also that like, grieving the version of ourselves that we used to be. But the promise of alchemy, friends, is that after death comes rebirth. So, let's remember that we are going through these processes, trusting that when we enter into the fires of transformation, when we enter into a healing crucible, and we're working with these healing forces, we're working with spiritual forces, we're working with our supplements and our modalities and our body work, etc., that we are supporting the continuation and the rebirth of that which is most aligned, that which is most authentic, that which is most true to our highest health and well-being as this new iteration of the version of ourselves. So there is this aspect of like a lot of vulnerability, and I think people get really hung up on the loss part, but looking at, okay, what is becoming possible by you moving this stuck energy, yucky trauma out of your body? What becomes possible for you when you let go of your developmental trauma, childhood conditioning? What becomes possible for you on the other side of this healing journey? That perhaps you get to have more sovereignty in your life. You get to have even healthier, more meaningful relationships. You get to feel a new level of being at home in your body. Your body may not feel exactly the same, but you get to inhabit it in a different and more meaningful and powerful way. So these are, the promise of moving through that is that there is rebirth on the other side. And no, we don't know exactly what that will look like, but we can, again, trust the process of transformation and know that if we're engaging with these principles of healing, this is just kind of how healing works. And if we're, asking for support, another really big part of this is having somebody in your corner who gets it and who can help guide you through the process. Then ultimately you showing up for yourself in love and in service and compassion and presence can only ever be a good thing.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying here in terms of kind of going back in and cleaning up some of these early pieces, these early childhood pieces. And a lot of times we have something that we're moving through and we sort of focus on it as the thing, when there's all of these other pieces that can be brought in to support the thing, which are in terms of trauma healing, nervous system repair, somatic, physical movement, body work, uh, energy work, working spiritually, starting to work with our practices and our guides, and learning how to be in a different experience of life, connecting more to nature, connecting more to what is nourishing and supportive, and deeply changing our habits and our thoughts and our relationship to ourselves. All of those things are part of this path. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's rarely just, oh, well, I just did this one little, I just made this one tweak and then everything was fine after that. No, like if you're actually having something come up, then it's systemic, it's within you in lots of different areas, and it is asking for lots of different changes and lots of different attention. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is also different from that Western perspective of let me take a pill and just make that symptom end. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes then, down the road, you're like, oh, well, that symptom hasn't really gone away. I sort of put a blanket over it so that I couldn't feel it as much. But
Mm-hmm.
there's the underlying pieces that need to be dealt with.
Right. That's again the holistic viewpoint of this is like, okay, if you're experiencing pain in this one area, it's probably actually rooted in more than just that. So let's leave people with a couple of tools and recommendations. And Kat, do you want to tell people about your upcoming course that you've got?
Right. So right now I've been creating a new program, which I haven't created a large new program in a while because I've been so focused on the healer's process and the book and those materials. But I have created a program called Heal Thyself, which is a somatic, energetic, spiritual approach to healing. And it really goes into all of the tools and the looking at how do you shift things very deeply within the system and learn how to nourish and protect and fulfill yourself at really deep levels and to move through in a group container with other people to move through the things that might be coming up and holding you back so that it's not this scary, lonely journey, but something that can feel transformational and fulfilling and supportive of wherever you're at.
Mm, awesome. And you can find Kat's work through her website, catherinebird.com. So go jump on it for Heal Thyself. And then for me, I've mentioned alchemy a handful of times. You know, this healing journey really is an alchemical process. And if you are called to the mysteries of alchemy, I teach a 200-hour alchemy certification training course that begins every March. So I am currently taking applications for next year's cohort. If this calls to you and you want to master the process of transformation and cultivate your spiritual skill development in learning tools to heal your body, mind, spirit, and heart completely and confidently offer transformation to other people, then you can contact me through my website, michellehawk.com, and we'll talk about if the alchemy course is a good fit for you in your journey. So please come back, like, follow, subscribe, tune into more episodes. And our next episode upcoming will be an extension of the conversation here. And so please tune into that, and we'll talk to you soon.